Botswana is making significant strides towards transitioning from coal-fired electricity to renewable energy. As part of implementing the energy policy and renewable energy strategy, the government of Botswana has made a decision to increase renewable energy penetration from 2% to 30% by 2030. Our second Transitional National Development Plan prioritizes climate change. This has enabled the integration of climate change risks into all aspects of planning, decision-making, and implementation. As a developing country, Botswana prioritizes adaptation as it reduces the vulnerability of communities to climate-related hazards, and in so doing, protecting livelihoods and ecosystems, as well as enabling them to be more resilient. Some of the adaptation actions implemented by Botswana include development of drought-tolerant crop and livestock species, the north-south water pipeline that transfers bulk water to the southern parts of the country where there is a deficit. Excellencies, I note with satisfaction the increased number of youth organizations involved in the intergovernmental climate change process. This will indeed ensure effective participation of the youth in climate change policy decision-making processes. In my capacity as the global chair of the group of LLDCs, I wish to declare the intention of the group to participate in climate change negotiations as a group. In this regard, we seek the support of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate to provide the necessary assistance for the group to achieve this objective. Let me conclude by pledging my support to the COP presidency as you direct the debates towards timely results regarding implementation, particularly climate finance for adaptation and mitigation actions, technology, development, and research, and conclusion of the modalities of the Loss and Damage Fund. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is now my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Semoku Meliet Kone, Vice President of Côte d'Ivoire. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Monsieur le Président des Émirats Arabes Unis,
President of the United Arab Emirates, President of COP28,
Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement,
Excellencies, Heads of State and Government,
il m'est particulièrement agréable
it is a great pleasure for me to convey the greetings of His Excellency Mr. Alassane Ouattara, President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, to his counterparts and to all delegates involved in this COP28. Côte d'Ivoire welcomes the holding of this conference of the parties in the United Arab Emirates and hails the commitment of the host country to strive to ensure the success of our proceedings with the support of all states. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, COP28 is being held at a time where the planet is experiencing an unprecedented climate stress, brought on by record temperatures and episodes of ever more violent and devastating weather events. It is now time for the first global stocktake on the implementation of the Paris Climate Agreement. The alarming state of our planet demonstrates non-compliance with commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This non-compliance has prevented efforts to limit heating and warming below 2 degrees C. Island states are disappearing progressively in the Pacific. Countries across many different continents are devastated by climate events of an unprecedented scope linked to climate change. Faced with this reality, the international community must mobilize. For this reason, my country welcomes the agreement on the Loss and Damage Fund in the first few hours of this conference. We must make every effort to ensure that this fund, upon which so many have pinned their hopes, is able to deliver on the expectations of the most vulnerable countries. It is also time to urge the Green Climate Fund and other partners to mobilize more resources for the adaptation of African countries to the effects of climate change and to ensure finance for the energy transition of the continent. Notwithstanding this, there is a need to avoid a situation in which finance for energy transition increases the debt of countries in development even further. Ladies and gentlemen, time is running out for us. Developed countries must decarbonize their economies with resolve. They must make good on their commitments in terms of climate finance for developing countries. As far as my country, Côte d'Ivoire, is concerned, we are honoring our commitments under the Paris Agreement, and we have decided to step up our climate action. In this regard, my country is continuing to successfully implement the objective of reducing its greenhouse gas emissions by 30% prior to 2030, as opposed to the previous objective of 28%. At the same time, the government is accelerating the energy transition of the country with a view to increasing the share of renewable energy in its energy mix to 42% by 2030. Several projects in the spheres of solar, biomass, hydropower, and others are underway in order to leverage the country's immense potential in terms of renewable energy from different sources. Moreover, my country is continuing its project to carry out the Forest Legacy Restoration Program and the Zero Carbon Agricultural Program. What is more, my country is now ready to issue carbon credits from the Thai forest, a forest which has a great carbon capture capacity. Ladies and gentlemen, this conference must enable us to revive the objectives set in Paris in 2015 in order to reverse the current trajectory of warming of our planet and to extricate ourselves from climate inaction, as climate inaction leaves us all doomed. With this in mind, access to climate resources must be facilitated for developing countries. Africa must continue to appeal for an urgent reform of global climate financial governance in order to make it more inclusive, equitable, and representative for all stakeholders. My country believes that this is the only condition upon which African states will be able to surmount the challenge of funding their nationally determined contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now it is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Mohammed B.S. Jallow, Vice President of the Gambia. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of His Excellency President Adama Barrow, President of the Republic of the Gambia, I would like to thank the people and government of the United Arab Emirates for the warm welcome and hospitality accorded to me and my delegation. I congratulate His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, President of the United Arab Emirates and ruler of Abu Dhabi, for the successful organization of the 28th Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Excellencies, it is with great humility and honor that I stand before you today at this crucial climate summit to share with you the Gambia's experience in combating climate change and addressing problems caused by climate-related events. My government is aware of the challenges posed by climate change. They are real and they affect us all. The theme of this event, climate transition and adaptation, encapsulates our shared journey towards a sustainable future. It acknowledges that we must transition from practices that harm our planet and adapt to changes we are currently facing. We recognize that transitioning to a low-carbon, sustainable economy is not only an environmental imperative, but also an economic opportunity. Therefore, we are still committed to promoting the use of green and clean energy, sustainable agriculture, and eco-friendly technologies. We have the fervent belief that this transition will not only reduce our carbon footprint, but also create jobs, stimulate innovation, and improve the quality of our life of our citizens. Reports published by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change demonstrate that Africa is highly impacted by climate change. In the Gambia, a small and vulnerable low-lying nation, we have acutely felt the impact of climate change in recent years. Erratic weather patterns, cyclic floods and droughts resulting to food insecurity, population displacements, and increased temperatures are occurrences affecting our communities, agricultural production, and water resources management. The Gambia updated its nationally determined contribution in December 2021 and submitted its long-term climate neutral development strategy 2050 to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in September 2022 in accordance with its obligations under the Paris Agreement. In addition, we are working on local adaptation measures that range from reinforcing flood mitigation infrastructure to implementing climate-resilient agricultural practices, including recently launched climate-smart agricultural projects, climate-resistant fisheries, and adaptive capacity strengthening of our rural population through climate-resilient and diversified livelihoods. These actions are vital for safeguarding our people and ecosystems. However, our strides to combating climate change through adaptation and mitigation means are mainly hindered by lack of financial resources necessary to invest in clean energy, resilient infrastructure, and adaptive measures. As countries most affected by climate change, our shared goal must be to bridge the gap between aspiration and action through global cooperation. We encourage the international community to honor their commitments to international agreements, particularly the Paris Agreement. Adequate and predictable funding, structured for quick disbursements and not tied up in complex red tape, is essential to support countries like ours as we embark on this transformative journey. We call upon the developed countries that have contributed more to the accumulation of greenhouse emissions to deliver on their promise and increase financial support to vulnerable nations so as to enable them to undertake the necessary transitions and build climate-resilient societies that is critical to meeting the SDG targets. Excellencies, as we transition, we must also adapt to the climate impacts that are already here and those that are yet to come. We must protect our communities and ecosystems from the unavoidable effects of climate change. Our communities need support and strategies to build their resilience. Education and awareness creation should be the cornerstones of our approach. We must educate our citizens about climate change, foster a sense of stewardship, and inspire them to participate actively in our efforts to transition and adapt. We must view climate education as an investment in the future, which requires the effort of all. In conclusion, let us remember that climate change does not discriminate based on nationality or wealth. It is incumbent upon us to act together with determination and urgency. We would once again reaffirm our readiness to play our part in the global effort to combat climate change and create a better world for future generations. Our NDC is ambitious enough to contribute our fair share to achieving the net zero emissions target. Together, we can achieve our climate goals through collective action. We can ensure that finance, climate transition, and adaptation are not just themes for discussion, but cornerstones of our shared future to have a healthy and wealthy planet. I thank you, and let us work together for a more sustainable and resilient world.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is now my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. David Choquiohoncha Cespedes, Vice President of the Plurinational State of Bolivia. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
The indigenous and original peoples of our Mother Earth have never adapted to the world of imbalance and division. They have managed to resist imperialism, capitalism, and colonialism without ceasing from their centuries-long activities of harvesting and farming. Centuries of geopolitical clashes and domination have left them vulnerable and weak in all their expressions: religious, political, economic, social, and environmental doctrine of the West and of modernity have broken previously existing relationships, replacing symbiosis with struggles for power and conflict around the world. There is an almost insane denial to live in harmony and to live in balance, and this has condemned the Earth to death. There are many assaults on our well-being and our future, and we see Mother Earth struggling to regenerate. Part of this is because we've moved away from living in tune with nature, as I've said. It's been replaced by a synthetic world, an online world, a virtual world. And even what should be useful vehicles, such as actions on climate change, have been used as pretext and vehicles for Western hegemony. The climate crisis, but the latest chapter in a long history of hypocrisy and lies. The global North is responsible for the global imbalance that we're seeing, putting technology at the service of their capitalist, patriarchal growth model. They seek permanent growth to the detriment of the global South. The global North undermines the rights of the global South while preaching rights. They claim to us that they don't have money to resolve the issues, but send fortunes on the military-industrial complex and genocidal wars such as those we're seeing in Ukraine and Palestine. Developing countries have prepared a broad path for developed countries who rely on our resources and yet trample all over us and do not allow us to tread the path with them. But this has led to the current involuntary self-destruction that we're seeing. The UNFCCC is being used to subjugate humanity and its free thinking, subjugate it to the climate change dogma, which calls for the capitalist decarbonized utopia, where everything is measured in carbon units, where previously it was measured in money. This is not climate justice. This is not respect for the rights of Mother Earth. The owners of the system, bankers, scientists, the industrial armament complex, are destroying vulnerable peoples and Earth, and they often blame these peoples. But they are the ones who are to blame, serving on bended knee their god money, allowing their god to devour their own children, just like the god Kronos. We therefore call upon the peoples of the world to stand up, the original peoples first and foremost, because we can refute the lies. We can protect the culture of life. We can protect Mother Earth. We can prevent recolonization through the guise of decarbonization and promote free, prior, and informed consent on a genuine basis, not unthinking free, prior, and informed consent, which makes people victims of this new hegemonic model of decarbonization, which is just capitalism by another guise, and the hegemony once again represents the power and the greed of the global North. We need to pursue balance and harmony. The original peoples represent the hope for saving Mother Earth and staving off the multiple crises which have been caused by neocolonial, capitalist, imperialist, patriarchal Western culture. Only by recognizing those roots and combating saying, will humankind be free? Refusing to recognize this reality will mean that many of us will continue to be subject and dominated. It's time to wake up. It's time to pursue genuine cleansing and health and ensure genuine balance and equality between all peoples and Earth.
Session of the day. It is a panel discussion on Asian leadership in addressing climate change. But today, we will start our session with an introduction to the Asian Center for Climate Change. For that, I would like to invite Mr. Engineer Ahmad Zaimadin bin Pehin, Datuk Laila Raja, Major General Datuk Paduka Seri Haji Awang Halbi, Head of Brunei Climate Change Secretariat, Prime Minister Office of Brunei Darussalam, to deliver his presentation. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and good morning. First of all, thank you very much for having me here and allowing me to represent Brunei. And I apologize that you had to say my full name because it's a mouthful. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Zaim Halbi. I head the Brunei Climate Change Secretariat. If you do know me, I'm still Zaim Halbi, so let's keep it that way. So I'm glad to be here at COP, first and foremost, to be able to talk about the ASEAN Center for Climate Change, because it's something that we're proud of. It's something where we've been able to work closely with our ASEAN member state partners for the past 2 years. Before I go straight into the presentation, I had the fun and opportunity of spending an hour in security. So it allowed me to do some research on ASEAN. So it's best for me to probably give some context on ASEAN before I go into the ASEAN Center for Climate Change. So those of you who don't live in Southeast Asia, ASEAN is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. We have 10 countries as member states. And in terms of geography, it's just under 5 million square kilometers. Coastlines around 173,000 kilometers, and population is just under 670 million. I want to put that into context because 670 million is a big number. And just under 500,000, 440 million people live within 100 kilometers of the coastline. So you can imagine, with climate change happening, what are the risks that are being posed to them? At the same time, I come from a private sector background. We always talk about value. So back in 2021, I want to lay out some context before this was introduced. The GDP for ASEAN was around $3.2 trillion in USD. Last year is around 10.3. So you can imagine in terms of the flows of goods and services, it's a very significant area within the region. And one thing I have to compliment is the wealth of cultures and the diversity in the region. You see I'm doing a bit of a tourism plug for Southeast Asia, so please do make sure after COP, that's where you head towards. So with regards to climate change, especially in 2020, post-COVID, 2021 and COP26, all ASEAN countries actually made pledges in terms of decarbonization, carbon neutrality, as well as net zero. We've heard them say climate change is a global problem, it requires a global solution. Similarly, it's an ASEAN problem, it also requires an ASEAN solution. We also have to be conscious that it's very different starting points for different ASEAN countries, so we have to be conscious of how we support one another. The cost of doing nothing is actually a lot worse, because it's always easiest, right? Let's just wait and see the tide, we've been okay. But we have to be concerned with adaptation impacts. I've just mentioned the 450 million people who live by the coast. Sea level rise is real. The cost of doing nothing to the GDP. Asian Development Bank has forecasted that the GDP will shrink by 11% by the end of the century due to climate impacts if we do nothing. And of course, the risk of breaking this unity and causing fragmentation within ASEAN countries if we don't work together. I don't have to repeat it, but Southeast Asia is definitely one of the world's most vulnerable regions when it comes to climate change. We face issues such as droughts, floods, typhoons, sea level rise, and heat waves. Hopefully not all at once. But not all is bad. I want to make sure that we talk about the advantages of ASEAN. First of all, in terms of the gap towards neutrality or net zero, it's a lot more manageable in ASEAN, especially if you compare with the EU, the US. We're also blessed with high nature-based potential. We also have complementarity, different skills and different strengths. And lastly, capital is growing and it's more available. So this is something that we should definitely leverage upon. So it's against this backdrop, back in 2021 when Brunei Darussalam chaired the ASEAN, we committed to coming up and establishing with the ASEAN Center for Climate Change. And this was done, of course, in tandem and in collaboration with our ASEAN member state counterparts. So one thing, without going into all the words, I'll give you time to read them, but the idea for the center is to be that coordination, that nucleus for all things climate change within the region. We know that climate change is not just weather, it's not just energy, it's a lot of things. And depending who you speak to, they can always put it under the banner of climate change. But the idea is for this to be the intergovernmental center for climate coordination in ASEAN. I'm proud to say, and I'd like to take this moment to recognize my team at the Brunei Climate Change Secretariat. Small they might be, but mighty they were, especially in developing the establishment agreement, the host country agreement, which has allowed us to be in this position. So as you can see, some of the anticipated functions include developing common policy recommendations for the region, having a forward look ahead, platform for coordination, but also being the focal so that we are able to work very closely, not just within ASEAN, but also amongst our with our international partners. One thing when it comes to ASEAN, we have the ASEAN ways of working, which we all know and we all love. And of course, through there, we've realized that there needs to be some level of coordination. So I'm proud to share that in tandem with the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, this will be governed by the ASEAN Senior Officials on Environment to make sure that we're holistic and we're not operating in silos. Of course, it's not just the ACB, right? It just so happens to be under the same governing board. But we also have working together with ASEAN Center for Energy, ASEAN Center for Sustainability, and the upcoming ACC THPC, and many, many more. So this is a very good opportunity to make sure that we allocate our resources and priorities to the things that matter the most without necessarily overlapping. At this point in time, the Brunei Climate Change Secretariat, we're project managing the establishment. We've been working together with the ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change, which Malaysia is chairing. We're also working with environment working groups, and we're also being the focal point that speaks to different international organizations and dialogue partners to advance this agenda. So it's been a long and fun journey. So back in 2021, when we made the commitment, a concept paper was developed. We worked very closely with the ASEAN Secretariat within our MFAs. And I'm proud to say that it took only a year and a half. I hope that's considered quick. But it took us a year and a half through consultations, through relationship building with other ASEAN partners. And I want to take this moment to thank you as well for your feedback and for your support, especially to the ASEAN Secretariat for facilitating this, because it's gotten us to a point where we endorsed it at the ministerial level at the recent ASEAN Ministerial Meeting on Environment in Laos back in August. We had the handover ceremony, and this is also where I'd like to invite our other ASEAN counterparts to sign the establishment agreement, and we can then begin the process of ratification. We've highlighted where we'd like it to be. We talked about policy recommendations, we talked about being a focal, but we also want the center to focus on research. And that's why we've identified the University of Brunei Darussalam to house the center. Little did I know when I spoke to my counterparts in ACB, that was how they started off as well. So I'd like to say that good minds think alike. And hopefully we will appoint an interim executive director soon. We've looked at a few candidates and we had a name. So if you do ask me who it is, I'm not going to confirm nor going to deny, but you can try. And of course, we also have our dialogue partners who have been keen to help. So at this point in time, the Climate Change Secretariat, as the project manager, we're helping develop the path forward for the ACCC. We see this as a big opportunity to capture within the region, not just to tackle issues of climate change, but also the opportunities in the transition and see how we can develop further value together. And I don't think it's just us. And that's why we've seen dialogue partners, strategic partners, so Australia, New Zealand, the UK, South Korea, China, Japan, they've all stepped forward. Brunei Darussalam, we've already committed to allocate $1.5 million to set up the center for the operationalization costs for the next 3 years. But New Zealand, for example, have already stepped forward and said, well, we're contributing $500,000 New Zealand dollars solely for the purpose of research. So we see the interest and we see the excitement coming from various dialogue partners. And hopefully even through this platform at COP, we can also get more excitement for ACCC and have more people involved. I'm going to keep it short for today because I want to make sure that we're in the spirit of dialogue, and I believe the ministers will be arriving soon, so hopefully this is in good time for their arrival so we can have further conversations. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have later, and thank you very much.
Let us give a round of applause to Mr. Ayar Ahmad Zaimadin for the presentation regarding Asian Climate Change Center. Thank you very much, Mr. Ayar Ahmad Zaimadin. Ladies and gentlemen, before we go to our next sessions, I would like to give a warm welcome to our guest of honor, the Honorable Mr. Nik Nazmi Ahmad, Minister of Natural Resource, Environment and Climate Change, and RECC Malaysia. Thank you, Mr. Nik Nazmi, for coming today. Also, today, we're going to have a few moderators and speakers. We just listened to our Mr. Senior Ahmad Zaimadin bin Pehin, Datuk Laila Raja, Major General, Datuk Paduka Seri Haji Awang Halbi, Head of Brunei Climate Change Secretariat, Prime Minister Office of Brunei Darussalam, will be one of our speakers. Together with us, representative from ASEAN members, states and ASEAN secretariats, distinguished speakers and moderator, our international partners, GIZ, ASEAN German Climate Action Programs, our distinguished moderators and speakers, welcome and thank you for making time for these sessions. Ladies and gentlemen, the next session will be focusing on the introductions. We have listened to the introduction to the Asian Center for Climate Change, and now we'll be showcasing of the leadership of ASEAN in dealing with climate change in the regions. To start the session, I would like to invite the Honorable Mr. Nik Nazmi Ahmad, Minister of NRCC, to deliver his opening remarks.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, our international partner, GIZ, a very warm welcome to this significant gathering that brings us together at COP28 to address one of the most pressing challenges of our time, which is climate change. Indeed, it is an honor to have a joint event with the government of Brunei Darussalam and strong support from GIZ to further elaborate on ASEAN leadership in addressing climate change. I extend my appreciation to the distinguished speakers representing the ASEAN member states and the ASEAN Secretariat. Your valuable contributions enrich the discussions and underscore the collaborative spirit essential for addressing shared challenges. As we embark on this crucial journey, it is important to acknowledge the shared responsibility that binds us as members of the ASEAN community. Climate change knows no borders, and its impacts are felt far and wide, affecting the very fabric of our societies, economies, and ecosystems. Ladies and gentlemen, ASEAN is now home to a total population of 670 million and a combined GDP of $3 trillion, making us, if we are one country, the 5th largest economy in the world. By 2030, we will be the 4th largest. It is no stretch of imagination to say that we are the fulcrum of Asia, as well as a key engine for global economic growth. Indeed, it has been said that the Asian century will be an ASEAN one. By that every gesture, therefore, how we address climate change and its related challenges could be decisive in relation to Asia and globally. The ASEAN region is certainly no stranger to the impacts of climate change. From rising sea levels to extreme weather events, we have witnessed the toll it takes on our communities. An IMF report way back in 2018 noted that average temperatures in the region have risen every decade since 1960. Quoting the Asian Development Bank's 2015 estimates, it was noted that unchecked, climate change would shave 11% of Southeast Asia's GDP by the end of the century. In other words, we would suffer more than other regions in the world. Cognizant of these challenges, the ASEAN member states are fully committed to achieve the UNFCCC and Paris Agreement goals, particularly by upholding the principle of equity, equal and common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities in the light of the markedly different national circumstances in our region. We also share the most profound concern regarding the continuing rise in global GHG emissions, climate risk, and impacts on natural and human systems, including those outlined in the 6th Assessment Report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. In the face of adversity, we find strength in our diversity and resilience in our unity. Today, we reaffirm our commitment to work together to mitigate the impacts of climate change, adapt to its inevitable consequences, and foster sustainable development across our nations. Ladies and gentlemen, in this critical role as the chair of the ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change, AWGCC, Malaysia is committed to fostering collaboration, driving innovation, and supporting the effective implementation of our collective climate change action plan within the ASEAN community. Malaysia recognizes the need for swift and meaningful responses to climate change, and as the chair of the working group, we pledge our support to ensure the effective implementation of the AWGCC action plan. Considering the importance of climate change to our region in global platforms such as COP28, as the chair of AWGCC, I would like to emphasize the need for the ASEAN spirit to explore the opportunity to negotiate issues of common interest as one voice. ASEAN, as we know, has been decisive since its founding in 1967 in ensuring peace, neutrality, and connectivity of our region. I would argue that as a platform with regional and even global reach, that it could also help us address the pressing challenges of our time, including climate change. For instance, I strongly believe ASEAN is an institution that has the convening power in advancing the climate negotiations in UNFCCC. ASEAN's leadership and convening role is an untapped asset that can be leveraged to negotiate issues of common interest such as just transition, climate finance, loss and damage, and global goal on adaptation. Separately, developing a long-term mitigation strategy for ASEAN will be key to inform sectoral and cross-sectoral policy planning in line with the pathway towards the Paris Agreement goals. In this regard, Malaysia is formulating a long-term low-emission strategy and NDC roadmap, which will serve as a guideline for our aspirations towards achieving net zero emissions as early as 2050. Among our key priorities is the drafting of the Climate Change Bill, which we estimate to be completed in 2 years' time, the establishment of a National Adaptation Fund, which is in the works, and the development of a carbon market mechanism. Over the years, the AWGCC has demonstrated a strong commitment to address climate change, including through multi-sectoral dialogue and relevant activities involving key partners in various sectors. I applaud efforts by all ASEAN member states and stakeholders for your commitment in championing this important task under the AWGCC Action Plan. We also see the establishment of the ASEAN Climate Change Center in this region as signifying a monumental step towards a shared vision of a greener, more resilient ASEAN. The center, under Brunei's guidance, is poised to become a hub of innovation, knowledge sharing, and collaborative action, setting an example for the entire region and beyond. The choice of Brunei as the home of the ASEAN Climate Change Center exemplifies not only the commitment of the nation, but also its leadership in fostering regional cooperation on this paramount issue. I would like to record our appreciation to Brunei Darussalam for your dedicated efforts and unwavering commitment in ensuring the successful establishment of the center. In conclusion, I'm also honored to extend a heartfelt invitation to our ASEAN friends to actively participate in the engaging sessions organized at the Malaysian Pavilion. This platform has been designed to foster collaboration, share insights, and showcase the collective efforts not only by Malaysia, but also by ASEAN in addressing pressing challenges that we face with climate change. We are also likewise excited to visit the pavilions of our fellow ASEAN neighbors. Each pavilion, we feel, represents a unique story of commitment innovation, and sustainable practices. I look forward to further engaging with other ASEAN leaders and strongly support the recent ASEAN Joint Statement on Climate Change submitted to the UNFCCC. This joint statement exemplifies shared vision and collaborative spirit that binds us together as ASEAN leaders. As I have highlighted, ASEAN matters in climate change. We have done a lot, and God willing, we'll do a lot more, especially in securing a just transition. We must also recognize that there are things that we must upgrade in the ASEAN way of doing things to deal with the new challenges of climate change and pollution. I will also urge the developed nations of the world to realize that ASEAN, which is so diverse politically and socio-economically, is in a way a microcosm of Asia and even the world, including for how climate change can be effectively but also inclusively dealt with. It could well be, as noted, that our region will be decisive in whether humanity can succeed or fail in this quest. It is a heavy responsibility, and as such, we need not only unity within our region, but also the support of the globe, including those that are better off and those that benefited from the ASEAN region in developing in the past. We are not seeking charity or handouts, but the wherewithal to aid the efforts to ensure the survival of our species. May our collective efforts at COP28 contribute significantly to the global fight against climate change and inspire positive change for generations to come. I very much look forward to the engagements ahead, and I wish you all a productive and successful COP28. Thank you.
Thank you for the speech. I shall now invite the Honorable Ning Nazmi to present a token of appreciation to our esteemed moderators and speakers. First, I would like to invite Ms. Karen Algoa, Commission Manager of Climate and Biodiversity, GISAC, to the stage. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Engineer Ahmad Zainuddin, Head of Brunei Climate Change Secretariat, Prime Minister Office of Brunei Darussalam. Next to the stage, Dr. Wahyu Marjaka, Director of Regional and Sectoral Resource Mobilization, Ministry of Environment and Forestry, Indonesia. Next is Dr. Wong Sok, Head of Environment Division, Asian Secretariat. And lastly, Mr. Shin Liang Chia, Deputy Director of Global Partnership, International Climate Change Secretariat, Singapore. Now we would like to invite Mr. Ning Nazmi, together with all our distinguished guests, moderators, and speakers, to the stage for photography sessions. Okay, thank you to the Honorable Mr. Ning Nazmi for the sessions. Thank you for our guests of honors and moderators and speakers. Unfortunately, Mr. Ning Nazmi has to attend another matter and will be departing the session. We extend our heartfelt gratitude for his time and expertise shared with us today. Thank you very much, Mr. Ning Nazmi. Let's give us a warm of applause to our honorable guests. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will move on to our panel of discussion sessions. This session will be moderated by Ms. Karen Algoa, Commission's Manager of Climate and Biodiversity, GISAC. And together joining her on stage is Mr. Engineer Ahmad Zainuddin, Head of Brunei Climate Change Secretariat, Prime Minister of Office of Brunei Darussalam, Dr. Wahyu Marjaka, Director of Regional and Sectoral Resource Mobilization, Ministry of Environment and Forestry, Indonesia, Mr. Shin Liang Chia, Deputy Director of Global Partnerships, International Climate Change Secretariat Singapore, and Dr. Wong Sok, Head of Environment Division, Asian Secretariat. Let us give a warm welcome to our panelists to the stage and to start the session.
Hello. Selamat pagi, Bapak Ibu semuanya. Welcome to this panel discussion, and I'm very honored to be moderating it, representing GIZ Indonesia and ASEAN. So we all live in the region. We all know which are the consequences of the climate change that we are facing in Southeast Asia. As the minister just mentioned, climate change impacts no borders. So that's why this initiative of the ASEAN Center for Climate Change is so important to foster coordination and collaboration and sharing knowledge among all the ASEAN countries. It is a good idea, it's starting, but of course to put it into practice and to keep things moving or start things moving, leadership is very critical and very important, as someone has to take the lead in putting things into motion. So I would like to ask with the question of how critical, how crucial is the regional leadership in tackling climate change in Southeast Asia? And maybe I can start from Pak Wahyu.
Thank you very much, Karen. This is the first time for me to introduce and share our experience and knowledge and my perspective also. In responding the circumstances and the complex situation in the ASEAN region. Actually, ASEAN has been working diligently, and among others through the ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change to address this challenging actually. And in the future, we hope that ACCC can work closely with the AWGCC, which is an official working group of ASEAN member states, and especially under ASEAN social and cultural pillar. And to strengthen especially those related to climate change policies in the region, and what is important, how we can encourage people actually at the site level to actively and concrete involve in climate change action.
Thank you, Pak Wahyu. Mr. Singh Ling, you are representing here Singapore, the partnership in the National Climate Change Secretariat. What is your perspective on the leadership?
Hi. Well, first of all, I think that ASEAN is taking leadership, right? We've got quite a long history of pushing ahead on climate change efforts through the ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change, ASEAN Center of Energy, the ASEAN Working Group on energy, and there's already a lot of efforts that is pushing forward. And I think all ASEAN countries have actually submitted NDCs, and a lot of them have also submitted long-term strategies. So in a way, the region is pushing ahead on climate change efforts. And certainly, I think that within the ASEAN structures, we've got well-organized mechanisms to drive regional collaborations even further. And with the establishment of the ASEAN Center for Climate Change, I believe that this will be a very powerful hub and node to really pull the different strands. As you know, the climate change is a cross-cutting sector. So really, I see that the Secretariat, the Climate Change Center can play a very exciting coordinating role, to bring the rest of the region forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What does the ASEAN Secretariat has to say?
Well, thank you very much. I mean, a great pleasure to join you all today. I think it's an honor also to hear the statement from the minister. I think it's very clear that commitment and pledge to support ASEAN and then working with the ASEAN Center for Climate Change. This is one of the unique statements that we state during this COP28. This momentum for us to continue to grow. While ASEAN leadership in addressing climate change, these have been noticed by many leadership of ASEAN. Some of the key speakers already point out, but one of the key important areas that you may have observed, politically, ASEAN leader level always come to the point of the climate change. I mean, every year, ASEAN chairmanship have different sort of leadership. For example, I talk about 2018, Singapore, the special ASEAN ministerial meeting and ASEAN SAMCA, the ASEAN special ministerial meeting, which is quite momentum that taking stock as well, where we are at, and that's all the way we discuss about the climate change sort of agenda. And then, come to Thailand, do the same thing. I mean, Thailand do the statement in New York by the Prime Minister. This all ASEAN leadership to share the position and the way forward, how we can support and address not only the member state, but also join hand with international commitment. And then also go to Vietnam up to the certain moment, now come to the Brunei. That is the fruitful of leadership under the Brunei chairmanship. It's ASEAN Center for Climate Change. This ASEAN leadership continues growing importantly in the region. It's not only one country. Even now, the upcoming chair also state Laos also on climate change issue as well. So we are proud of ASEAN leadership that on the climate change aspect, and we believe this will be a driving force to make a difference in our region. I mean, on top of that, what I can say, the climate change center contribute importantly. I mean, as you have noticed, not only looking at the function and the role that proposed and presented by Bapak Zaim, but it's importantly about knowledge gap. This is one of the key things, because we talk a lot, but when it comes to stock-taking issue, then we still figure out how best we can present ASEAN as a whole. What is our overall picture of regional sort of policy coordination, recommendation, still gap here and there. Then not talking about the partnership gap, where we can mobilize resources to support member states and also support the community where receive more affected by this sort of impact and risk. Now, I come to the point leadership is not end there. Leadership in address climate change in ASEAN is go beyond that. I think leadership in every level of ASEAN society, that we need to continue to further strengthen. And I hope ACC Center will continue to grow and then engage those, every individual, every level of leadership in joining hand to address climate change. Furthermore, this is not only the leadership of center on every sort of ASEAN community and people, but also partner, ASEAN partner, such as Germany. Germany play important role, contribute important to ASEAN agenda on climate change, also EU, as well as other partners of ASEAN. So with that, we continue to strengthen and do more for our better future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Sahim, I let you rest a bit, as you have talked before. But I would also like to know from your side, after launching the idea, what is the leadership role that Brunei would be taking this?
Thank you very much for the question, and I'll add on to what my fellow panelists have said. I think it's leadership at various levels. One example that I can share is when we had a meeting back in May. So, by the way, none of us here are strangers to each other. So aside from leadership, it's also the relationship that we have. So at the ASEAN Working Group meeting back in May, we were talking about the Joint Statement for Climate Change. We also talked about the ASEAN Carbon Neutrality Strategy. And it was a good conversation where we asked the question as to why the Carbon Neutrality Strategy was born out of the economic pillar and not under the socio-economic pillar, a social-cultural pillar. Not so much that we wanted to take it away, but more so that we wanted to demonstrate that leadership from this particular pillar. But that being said, it's the relationship side. We knew that it's good that someone else is advancing the agenda. We'll support them, and then similarly, we'll do similar on the other side on climate change and economy. But also when it comes to relationships, one thing that ASEAN we should really appreciate is
the fact that we really do complement each other. We don't necessarily have to agree on all things, but our starting points can be accelerated by the fact that our cost base can be lowered by a lot by the fact that we're doing things differently, different strengths, and I think as what has been shared by Sin Liang, we do have our NDC targets, we do have mitigation targets, adaptation targets, and long-term strategies. What we can do is help accelerate it by working together.
Thank you. And you have been doing a very inspiring presentation of the ACCC. It has been launched. It presents a lot of challenges, but also opportunities for the country. So what is, how do you look forward into this? What are you expecting from the ACC? What would be the next steps? Maybe we can, yeah, you
Sure.
have microphone.
Since
you
I
can
have the mic,
start,
I'll just
and then you
answer
pass
very
it over.
quickly, and I'd like to hear their perspectives. Honestly, it's first of all, to be able to bring everything together as well. We have a lot of publications, a lot of studies, a lot of data sets within the region. It's a great chance to pull them all together. And I think from there, then we can really look at ourselves in the mirror, have a clear baseline, and then work with each other to say, okay, if Brunei's going to do this particular area, maybe this swim lane can be taken over by Indonesia, Singapore, etc. So at least for me, it's making sure that we all have a strong starting point.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, I'm highlighting the statement of the Brunei colleagues here that the ACC will be used to strengthen our collaboration and coordination among the IMS. Of course, this is the first time. And the second one, we need to develop also a collaboration with the partners, because we cannot do by ourselves. We need a friend, we need colleagues, we need collaboration, spread it around the ASEAN member state. And the third one is we can mobilize together among ASEAN member states using this institution. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think it's really hard to choose because there's so many important things that has been highlighted in Zain's presentation. For me, I think that one of the key things that I really look forward to from the ASEAN Center for Climate Change is really the whole idea of strengthening policy exchanges to help each other, to learn from each other's experiences, to build best practices, to be able to push forward in terms of ambitious climate strategies and goals. I think that and the other aspect is really in terms of international collaborations within ASEAN and with ASEAN with other partners as well. I don't have time, but just to list out a few things that are really on my wish list is really in terms of carbon markets, and I think there's tremendous potential for ASEAN countries to collaborate in that area. And then the other aspect is really in terms of CCUS, carbon capture and storage utilization. There are many ASEAN countries who have tremendous storage facilities, and there are also countries like Singapore who have, well, absolutely no storage facilities. But how can we demand aggregate and aggregate the supply solutions, drive down the cost of implementation so that some of these technologies can become commercially viable. And thirdly is in terms of hydrogen, right? And ASEAN is an amazing place for renewable energy. How can we collaborate in terms of regional energy grids, as well as exporting energy throughout, green, clean energy throughout to the rest of the world, having a common green electricity market as well. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
I think when we talk about climate change, very broad, I mean, involve multi-sector, multi-level. I mean, it's quite require a lot of support from everyone. It's not only ASEAN Center for Climate Change. That is my message I would like to call. There's no need to wait only ASEAN Center for Climate Change. Everyone can take action, can talk to the center, work together. This is the way we can accelerate faster. I think ASEAN Center for Climate Change, the number of challenge, as you may have learned already, among other, the establishment and operationalization of the center itself. And then it's not talking about the key focus of climate change, how we can accelerate, how we can advance the climate change agenda in our region. I think one of the key things I may contribute in this regard is about the center may reflect what is ongoing at the global scale, international fora. For example, such a COP itself. What is the new development? How ASEAN can prepare and can showcase and join hands with the international fora. For example, I can give, for example, right now we talk a lot about loss and damage. Whether we can have this opportunity for ASEAN. Nature-based solution for climate change, whether we can have something as an opportunity. Global stock taking, for example, whether we can do something. I mean, this keep up with what is going on and then also communicate and try to find way how to help the member state, sector, and city to be in line with this sort of international commitment. But it's not in mean that to make them hard, but to find way how to address them, how to support them more effectively in their capacity, where we believe this is quite the fundamental issue to guide the success and engagement of those people. So I believe Climate Change Center have a lot of urgent business right now with the COP decision and so on. So I believe this will create more opportunity, not only policy sort of level, but also try to mobilize and engage different stakeholders to join hands in this sort of climate action. So for that reason, there is the also open opportunity for all to join hands as well with ASEAN Center for Climate Change, or working with ASEAN Center for the ASEAN Climate Change Working Group, or ASEAN Secretariat. ASEAN Secretariat stand ready and commit to support all of you to join hands for climate change endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and it is clear that is with collaboration that changes can be made, and considering the size of ASEAN, as the minister was also mentioning, of course, the success of the Climate Change Center will be a showcase for other countries. And you have been mentioning already some ideas on what would be the next steps, but is there any specific priority in terms of regional climate actions that should be taken now in the short term? The ACCC is launched, so what are the prioritized climate actions at the regional level?
Yeah, I can start with that. So to be honest with you, I think it also depends on the direction from the governing board and this incumbent ED, because as shared there, that there are different priorities and there are also different interests, but it's trying to bring it all together. And I think the way Dr. Vongsok had said, right, as well as how do you put ASEAN in the agenda here at COP to make sure that whatever the outcomes is also factored in. So it'll be a bit difficult to say what that is just yet, but because I see 5 minutes over there, I guess one thing that I want to make sure is in whatever shape or form or whatever areas of priority, the big opportunity here is collaboration, not competition, right? I think this region, a lot of goods and services are flowing out and flowing in, oil and gas, for example. This is going to be the new North Sea, where the transition opportunity is also there. So we should look at capturing the value together and marrying that together with climate change and seeing the opportunity. And that could then help us prioritize what those areas are.
Thank you, Pak. Yes, from Indonesian perspective, we concerned about how we achieve the NDC target. This is for the first priority for Indonesia, and the second one is how we can develop and communicate long-term low greenhouse gas emission strategies among Indonesian and ASEAN member states. The third one is how we can improve adaptation to climate change and reduce vulnerability by implementing nature-based solution and ecosystem-based approach in Indonesia and also in ASEAN member states. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, I think like I've mentioned, I've really given my wish list. I want to see, the region working, rapidly in terms of international collaborations, seeing how we can come up with win-win solutions that can really benefit our countries and our communities through CCS, through carbon credit collaborations, through hydrogen, through regional energy grid that really works and really provides sustainable energy for our region. But if I were to go down one step to say that what would be the key priorities, I think it's really in terms of building up the institutional arrangements. First of all, getting our frameworks in place domestically, getting our transparency, our MRV frameworks. These are also very important. If you can't track what you can't measure. And I think it's really important for us to, and if you can't measure and you can't track, then you can't plan properly, right? So these are some of the key fundamentals that I think we can really learn from each other and also from international partners, including GIZ. I mean, you guys are fantastic in terms of really helping us in the region in terms of some of these solutions. And I think in terms of demand aggregation, in terms of really looking at harmonization or alignment of practices and guidelines, to enable greater interoperability of renewable solutions. I think these are some of the things that would be really exciting.
I think priority have been identified. I think it's a process. So with that, I believe the ACC Center working in collaboration with other stakeholders, particularly AWGCC, ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change, and all the key players, including our ASEAN partner, GIZ, and so on. This is the most important to identify the priority agenda to respond to the need of the region. So I think not only learn, I mean, my key message early priority say about COP, but I mean, the outcome of COP may not be enough. We have to consult and engage the different stakeholders in our region and our partner. This is the way I believe the fundamental to address the need of our region. With that, the key message, I think we have to hold the principle of ASEAN for fully engaged and meaningful sort of consultation of the stakeholder to prioritize and address the need of our people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and time's up. Well, 1 minute. From GIZ side, we would be very happy to collaborate and support the new ACCC. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure to moderate this session, very interesting answers, and as we said, the work begins now. So thank you very much, all, and yeah, we continue.
Thank you so much to our speakers and moderators for the comprehensive, insightful session. Let us give a warm applause to our moderators and speakers. I would like to invite our Asian member state to the stage, together with our moderators and speakers, to have a photography sessions. I would like to invite all the Asian member states to come to the stage to have a photography session with our moderators and speakers for these events. Come. We're going to do the Asian member state handshake, I was told. Is there such a style, huh? Oh, that's the Asian member state style, so okay. All right, everybody, look at the camera. All right, thank you very much to all our Asian member states, our moderators and speakers. Let us give a warm applause again to them. Ladies and gentlemen, we